They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But when your billionaire husband brings his 26-year-old mistress through the front door of the penthouse you helped him buy, cold doesn't even begin to describe it. My name is Evelyn Brooks, and this is the story of how I dismantled a man who thought he was untouchable. Before we begin, drop a comment to tell us which city you are watching from, and once the story ends, don't forget to rate us from 0 to 10, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Now sit back and enjoy every detail. Marcus Hale, venture capitalist, self-made billionaire, Forbes 400, the man who built an empire on calculated risks and ruthless precision. What he didn't calculate was me. 15 years. That's how long I stood beside him, not behind him, beside him. I was the one who vetted his deals when he was too arrogant to see the flaws. I was the strategist when he wanted to be the visionary. I made him sharper, smarter, richer. And on a Tuesday in October, he walked into our home with her. Chloe Dunn, 26, blonde, his PR assistant, the kind of woman who thought expensive dinners and private jets meant love. She had no idea she was just another asset he was liquidating. But here's what Marcus didn't know, what neither of them knew. I had been watching, waiting, planning. Because the moment I found the first hotel receipt, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw his clothes off the balcony like some scorned housewife in a bad drama. I did something far more dangerous. I got quiet. And by the time he brought her home, by the time he stood in our living room with that smug smile thinking he'd broken me, I had already taken everything that mattered, his reputation, his investors, his freedom. This is the story of one night, one decision, and two people who learned that some women don't fall apart when you betray them. Some women just fall back, regroup, and strike. But before we get to that night, you need to understand three things. First, who was Evelyn Brooks before she became the woman who destroyed Marcus Hale? Because the truth is, I wasn't always this cold. I wasn't always this calculated. There was a version of me that believed in love, that believed in partnership, that believed when a man looked you in the eye and promised forever, he meant it. Second, why would a man like Marcus, a man who built his entire empire on discretion and control, bring his mistress into the one place that was supposed to be sacred? Was it arrogance? Was it cruelty? Or was it something darker, something more deliberate, a test to see just how far he could push me before I finally broke? And third, the question no one asks until it's too late. When does betrayal stop being personal and start being tactical? When does a wife's heartbreak transform into a warrior's strategy? When does revenge stop being about emotion and become about precision? Because here's what you need to know. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't me losing control. This was 15 years of watching, learning, and understanding exactly how Marcus Hale operated, his patterns, his weaknesses, his blind spots. So ask yourself this. When a woman who knows every password, every business deal, every dirty secret, decides she's had enough, is it revenge or is it justice? Is she the villain or is she simply the reckoning he spent years creating? And most importantly, when two people walk into a trap they can't see, who's really the victim? Let me take you back 5 years. Before the mistress, before the lies, before everything fell apart. Marcus Hale wasn't always a billionaire. When I met him, he was ambitious, yes. Brilliant? Absolutely. But he was also drowning. His hedge fund was hemorrhaging money. Bad investments, worse partners, the kind of financial bleeding that doesn't stop until there's nothing left. I was a senior analyst at a rival firm. We met at a conference in Boston. He was giving a talk about disruption in venture capital, and halfway through his presentation, I noticed something, a flaw in his model. A blind spot in his risk assessment that would cost him everything if he didn't correct it. After his talk, I walked up to him, told him exactly what he was doing wrong. Most men would have been defensive, insulted, but Marcus? He listened. And 3 weeks later, he hired me. Within 6 months, I'd restructured his entire portfolio. Cut the dead weight. identified the opportunities everyone else was too scared to touch. His fund went from life support to Forbes headlines. And somewhere in those late nights, those strategy sessions that bled into dawn, we fell in love. Or at least, I thought we did. We got married 2 years later. City Hall. Nothing flashy. Marcus said he didn't believe in spectacle. He said what mattered was the partnership, the team, us against the world. And for a while, it really was us. I wasn't just his wife. I was his co-founder in every way that mattered. Every major deal, I vetted it. Every investor pitch, I refined it. Every crisis, I solved it. Marcus was the face, the charm, the vision. But I was the foundation, the architecture, the reason any of it stood at all. The media loved him. Time magazine, Bloomberg, CNBC, they called him a maverick, a genius, the man who could see around corners, and he let them. He never corrected the narrative, never said, "Actually, my wife is the reason this works." I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I didn't need the credit. I told myself that behind every powerful man was a woman who chose to be invisible. But invisibility has a cost. Somewhere around year 3, things shifted. Marcus started traveling more. Dubai, London, Singapore, always business, always essential. And I believed him because why wouldn't I? We were partners. We were building something. Then came the small things. The things you're not supposed to notice but you do anyway, because you know someone too well. A new cologne. Expensive. Something I'd never bought him. Text messages that made him smile in a way he didn't smile at me anymore. Late night calls he'd take in the other room, voice low, almost tender. And then one night, I found the receipt. Hotel Baccarat, presidential suite, 2 nights. The same week he told me he was in London closing a deal. I didn't confront him. That's what he expected. That's what most wives do. They scream. They throw things. They demand answers. They give the man a chance to lie, to manipulate, to turn it around and make them feel crazy for even asking. I did something smarter. I went quiet. I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I noticed Chloe, 26 years old, new to the PR team, bright-eyed, eager, the kind of girl who thought working for a billionaire was glamorous, who thought business trips to Milan meant something more than business. She wasn't a villain, not yet. She was just young, naive, the kind of woman who mistakes power for love and attention for commitment. Marcus started bringing her to events. Always professional, always explainable. She's handling our media strategy. She's coordinating the Forbes profile. She's managing the rebrand. But I saw the way he looked at her, the way his hand would linger on her shoulder just a second too long, the way he'd laugh at things she said that weren't even funny. And I saw the way she looked at him, like he was saving her. Like he was the answer to everything she'd ever wanted. I could have confronted them then, could have made a scene, could have played the role of the betrayed wife and walked away with half of everything in a divorce. But here's what most people don't understand about men like Marcus. They don't just take your love, they take your credit, your work, your brilliance, and then they act like they did it all themselves. So no, I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of watching me fall apart. I was going to do what I'd always done. I was going to strategize. I was going to observe. I was going to find every weakness, every vulnerability, every single thing he thought was untouchable. And then, when the moment was right, I was going to take it all back. Because Evelyn Brooks wasn't just Marcus Hale's wife, I was the woman who built him, and if I could build him, I could absolutely destroy him. The only question was when. It happened on a Friday night in October. I was supposed to be in Boston, a conference, 2 days. Marcus knew my schedule because I'd told him 3 weeks earlier. I'd even left the itinerary on his desk like I always did. Flight times, hotel information, panel discussions. What Marcus didn't know was that I'd canceled the trip 2 days before, told no one, Not my assistant, not my colleagues, no one, because I'd been tracking his calendar too. And I noticed something interesting. Every time I traveled, Chloe's schedule cleared. No meetings, no events, just blank space where a young PR assistant should have been working. So I waited, watched, and when Friday came, I didn't go to Boston. I went to a hotel 3 blocks from our penthouse, checked in under a different name, turned off my location, and waited for the confirmation I already knew was coming. At 7:43 p.m., my phone buzzed. Building security. Mr. Hale is arriving with a guest. I gave them 30 minutes, long enough to get comfortable, long enough to think they were safe. Then I came home. When I opened the door, the first thing I heard was laughter, her laughter. High and nervous and trying too hard to sound natural. And his, deep, confident. The same laugh he used to give me before everything turned cold. I walked into the living room, and there they were. Marcus on the couch, jacket off, tie loosened, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in months, and Chloe beside him, too close. Holding a glass of wine from our cellar, wearing a dress that cost more than her monthly rent. They both froze when they saw me. Marcus recovered first. Of course he did. That's what men like him do. They pivot, they adjust. They turn their mistakes into your misunderstandings. Evelyn, he said, standing, smoothing his shirt like this was just another business meeting. I thought you were in Boston. I was supposed to be, I said. Calm, even, no emotion. But plans change. Chloe looked between us, confusion flickering across her face. She was trying to read the room, trying to understand if this was normal, if I knew, if Marcus had told me she'd be here. I smiled at her. Not cruel. Just enough to unsettle. Chloe, I don't think we've been properly introduced. I'm Evelyn, Marcus's wife. Her face went pale. Not shock. Not exactly. Something worse. Realization. The kind that creeps in slow and settles heavy. Marcus stepped forward, trying to control the narrative the way he always did. This isn't what it looks like. Really? I walked past him, into the kitchen, opened a bottle of wine, poured 3 glasses, brought them back to the living room, set them on the table. Because it looks like you brought your mistress into our home, the home I helped you buy, with money I helped you earn. Chloe flinched at the word mistress. Like she hadn't considered that's what she was, like she thought this was something else, something more. I sat down across from them, crossed my legs, sipped my wine, let the silence stretch until it hurt. Evelyn, let's talk about this privately, Marcus said, his voice dropping into that low, controlled tone he used when he was trying to manage a situation. No, I said simply. I think Chloe should hear this. She deserves to know the truth, don't you think? Chloe looked at Marcus, waiting for him to say something, to fix this, to explain. But he didn't. He just stood there, jaw tight, calculating his next move. So I did it for him. Chloe, did Marcus tell you he was leaving me? I asked, looking directly at her. She hesitated, nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. He said you two were separated, that it was just a matter of paperwork. I laughed, not loud, just enough. Interesting, because we had dinner together Wednesday night, went over the quarterly reports, discussed our vacation to Aspen next month. I paused. Did he mention that? Her hands started shaking, just slightly, enough to see. Did he tell you about the other women? I continued, voice still calm, still steady. The one in London? The one in Singapore? Or are you special, Chloe? Are you the one he's actually going to leave me for? Evelyn, enough, Marcus snapped, and there it was. The crack in his composure, the anger he always kept buried under layers of control. No, Marcus, I said, standing now, meeting his eyes. Not enough, not nearly enough. I turned back to Chloe. She was crying now, silent tears running down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. You're not the villain here, I told her, and I meant it. You're just the latest in a long line of women who thought they mattered to him. But here's the truth. You don't. None of them did. Because Marcus doesn't love anyone but Marcus. I picked up my wine glass, held it up. So here's to new beginnings, I said. To knowing what we deserve. To understanding exactly who we've been sleeping with. I drank. Marcus didn't move. And Chloe just stared at me, her whole world recalibrating in real time, because she was starting to realize something that changed everything. Marcus had lied to her too, and if he lied about me, about us, about what he was leaving behind, what else had he lied about? I set my glass down, grabbed my coat, walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" Marcus asked, and for the first time I heard something unfamiliar in his voice, uncertainty. I looked back at him, at them both. "To finish what I started," I said. And I walked out, leaving them sitting in the wreckage of everything Marcus thought he controlled. Because that night wasn't the betrayal. The betrayal happened months ago. That night was just the beginning of the reckoning, and neither of them had any idea what was coming. What Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that I'd been recording everything for months, not just that night, everything, every phone call, every text message, every late-night conversation he thought was private, every business meeting where he discussed things that would make his investors very, very nervous. You see, when you're married to someone for 15 years, you learn their patterns, their passwords, their security questions, the name of their first pet, their mother's maiden name, all those little digital keys that unlock entire empires. And Marcus was careless, arrogant. He never thought I was paying attention because he never thought I was a threat. That was his first mistake. Within 48 hours of that dinner, I'd contacted 3 people, a lawyer, a journalist, and an old friend at the SEC. The lawyer was easy. I had documentation of everything. Offshore accounts Marcus had never disclosed. Shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Transactions that looked suspiciously like insider trading. None of it proven, not yet, but enough to raise serious questions. The journalist was easier. She'd been trying to write a profile on Marcus for 2 years. He'd kept declining, saying he valued privacy. What he really valued was control over his narrative. So when I offered her the real story, the one behind the Forbes covers and the CNBC interviews, she listened. And the SEC friend? She'd been watching Marcus for years, waiting for someone on the inside to confirm what they'd suspected all along. I gave her everything. The article dropped on a Tuesday morning. The man behind the empire, Marcus Hale's web of deception. It wasn't just about the affair. That would have been tabloid gossip, forgotten in a week. No, this was about the money, the lies, the pattern of using women, using employees, using anyone he could to build his image while hiding what he was really doing. And there, in the center of it all, was Chloe. The article painted her as a victim at first, the young employee seduced by power, manipulated into an affair with a married man. But then it pivoted. It revealed something Marcus hadn't told her. She wasn't just his mistress, she was his alibi. Every trip she thought was romantic, every dinner she thought meant something. Marcus had been using her to cover financial meetings that would raise red flags. He'd put her name on hotel registrations, restaurant bills, flight manifests, made it look like she was the one making decisions, attending meetings, signing documents. If anything went wrong, if anyone started asking questions, Chloe wasn't going to be his lover. She was going to be his scapegoat. The subpoena came 3 days after the article. Federal investigators wanted to talk to Chloe Dunn about her knowledge of Marcus Hale's business dealings, about trips to Switzerland, about meetings with Shell Company executives, about documents she'd allegedly signed. She hadn't signed anything. She didn't know anything. But Marcus had made it look like she did. I watched it all unfold from a distance. The news coverage, the social media firestorm, the investors calling emergency meetings, the board demanding answers. Marcus did what men like Marcus always do when they're cornered. He blamed someone else. He held a press conference, said he'd been betrayed by an employee who had access to confidential information, said Chloe had manipulated him, seduced him, used their relationship to steal company secrets and sell them to competitors. He made her the villain, and for 48 hours it worked. The narrative shifted. Poor Marcus, seduced by an ambitious young woman. Poor Marcus, taken advantage of in a moment of weakness. Until I released the recordings. Not all of them. Just enough. Just the ones where Marcus explicitly told Chloe what to say to investigators, where he coached her on how to lie, where he promised her money, protection, a future, if she just kept quiet and took the fall. The audio files went viral within hours. Marcus's voice, crystal clear, instructing Chloe on how to commit perjury, how to destroy evidence, how to make it look like she was acting alone. The press conference where I released them was brief. I didn't gloat. I didn't cry. I simply stated facts. My name is Evelyn Brooks. For 15 years I was married to Marcus Hale. For 15 years I helped build his company, his reputation, his empire. And for at least 3 of those years I watched him manipulate, lie, and destroy anyone who got in his way, including me, including Chloe Dunn, including every investor who trusted him with their money. I paused. Let it sink in. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because the truth matters. And the truth is that Marcus Hale is not the man you think he is. He's not a visionary. He's not a genius. He's a predator who built his empire on the backs of people he thought were too weak or too loyal to fight back. The room erupted with questions, cameras flashing, reporters shouting, but I was already walking away because I wasn't finished. Not yet. Chloe reached out to me 2 days later, a text message, simple, direct. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Can we talk? We met at a coffee shop in Brooklyn, far from Manhattan, far from cameras, just 2 women who'd been used by the same man. She looked different, smaller, the confidence, the shine, all of it gone, replaced by something raw and broken. He told me you were cold, she said quietly. That you didn't love him anymore. That you were just staying for the money. I know, I said. He told me I was special, that I was different. I know that too. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. How do you do this? How do you just keep going like nothing happened? I leaned forward, met her eyes. Because something did happen, Chloe, and I'm not pretending it didn't. But I'm also not letting him define what happens next. He doesn't get that power anymore, not over me. And if you're smart, not over you either. She nodded, wiped her face. What do I do now? You tell the truth, I said. All of it, to the investigators, to your lawyer, to anyone who asks. You stop protecting him, and you start protecting yourself. She did. 2 days later, Chloe gave a full statement to federal investigators, detailed every meeting, every document, every lie Marcus had fed her. She wasn't his accomplice. She was his victim. And now she was his witness. The FBI opened a formal investigation, insider trading, tax evasion, fraud, wire fraud. The kind of charges that don't just cost you money, they cost you decades. Marcus's empire began to crumble. Investors pulled out. Partners distanced themselves. The board forced him to step down. His face, once on magazine covers, was now on mugshots. And through it all, I stayed quiet, composed, watching from the shadows as everything he'd built collapsed. But then, just when it seemed like I'd won, just when it seemed like justice was finally being served, something happened. A lawyer showed up at my door. Not one of mine. Someone else's. He handed me an envelope, smiled politely, and walked away. Inside was a single document. A photograph, and a name I hadn't heard in 10 years. My hands started shaking, because Marcus wasn't the only one with secrets, and someone, somewhere, had just found mine. The photograph was old, 10 years, maybe more, grainy, taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. But it was clear enough to see me. Younger, different hair, different name, standing outside a building in Geneva with a man I'd tried very hard to forget. The document underneath had a single line highlighted in yellow. Evelyn Brooks, formerly Evelyn Cartwright, signatory on 17 offshore accounts registered to Hale Capital Management. My heart stopped. Not because I'd forgotten, but because I'd spent a decade making sure no one would ever connect those dots. You see, there was something I hadn't told anyone. Not Chloe. Not the journalists. Not even my lawyers. When Marcus and I got married, when I saved his company from collapse, I didn't just restructure his business. I rebuilt it from the ground up. New entities, new accounts, new legal structures that would protect us from the exact kind of scrutiny he was now facing. And I did it smart. I put my name on everything, not as his wife, as his partner, co-founder, co-owner. Every offshore account, every shell company, every hidden fund that Marcus thought belonged to him, legally on paper, belonged to both of us. 50-50. I'd done it to protect us, to make sure that if anything ever went wrong, if the business ever faced legal trouble, we'd be in it together, partners in every sense of the word. But what Marcus never realized, what he was too arrogant to ever check, was that over the years, I'd quietly restructured those agreements, changed the percentages, adjusted the ownership stakes, filed amendments in jurisdictions where he'd never think to look. By the time he brought Chloe home, by the time he thought he was humiliating me, I didn't own 50% of his empire. I owned 73%. The company he thought was his, the accounts he thought he controlled, the empire he'd built his entire identity around, belonged to me. And he had no idea. The lawyer who'd delivered the envelope wasn't threatening me. He was working for me. A final test to make sure the documentation was airtight, that every legal avenue had been closed, that when the moment came, Marcus would have nowhere to run. That moment came 6 days later. Marcus's legal team had been scrambling, trying to untangle the financial mess, trying to figure out how to protect his assets from federal seizure, and that's when they found it. The ownership documents, the amended filings, the truth. I got the call at 9 in the morning. Marcus's lead attorney, voice tight, professional, barely concealing panic. "Mrs. Hale, we need to discuss the corporate structure of Hale Capital." "I'm listening," I said. "Our records show significant discrepancies in the ownership documentation. It appears that your stake in the company is substantially larger than Mr. Hale believed." "That's correct." Silence. Long enough to hear him recalculating everything. "Mrs. Hale, do you understand what this means? If the company is seized, if Mr. Hale is convicted, you could be implicated as well. Your assets could be frozen. You could face charges." "I could," I said calmly. "If I were complicit, but I'm not. I have documentation showing that every questionable transaction, every offshore account, every decision that's now under investigation was made by Marcus without my knowledge or consent. I have emails, memos, recordings of meetings where I explicitly objected to certain financial strategies." Another silence. This one heavier. "You planned this." "I protected myself," I corrected. "There's a difference." The line went dead. 2 hours later, Marcus called. Not his lawyer. Him. And I could hear it in his voice, the rage, the disbelief, the first real fear he'd probably felt in his entire life. "You set me up." "No, Marcus," I said. "You set yourself up. I just made sure I wasn't standing next to you when everything collapsed. This is my company. I built this. We built this. And I have the paperwork to prove it. 15 years of documentation showing my contributions, my decisions, my work. The empire you thought was yours, it was always ours. You just stopped treating it that way." He was breathing hard now, losing control. "I'll fight this. I'll take you to court. I'll destroy you." With what money, Marcus? The accounts are frozen. The board has removed you. And the majority shareholder of Hale Capital Management, the person who actually gets to make decisions now, is me. I let that sink in. You wanted to humiliate me, to make me feel small, to show me that I was replaceable. Well, congratulations. You succeeded. You made me realize exactly how replaceable you are. I hung up. The federal investigation moved faster after that. With the company ownership clarified, with my cooperation and documentation, prosecutors could build a clear case. Marcus had acted alone, made decisions alone, hidden transactions alone. And Chloe testified, not against me, for me. She sat in that deposition room and told them everything. How Marcus had manipulated her, used her, put her name on documents without her knowledge, coached her to lie, promised her protection that never came. She cried through most of it, but she told the truth. And when the defense tried to paint her as a conspirator, as someone who'd knowingly participated in fraud, she looked directly at Marcus and said something that silenced the entire room. He told me Evelyn was cold, that she didn't care about anything but money. But she's the only person who told me the truth. She's the only person who didn't use me. The trial lasted 3 months. I attended every day, sat in the back, silent, composed, and I watched Marcus unravel. He'd always been so controlled, so calculating. But facing real consequences, facing the possibility of losing everything, the mask slipped. He gave an interview during the trial, against his lawyer's advice. Thought he could spin the narrative one more time, control the story the way he always had. The reporter asked him about the offshore accounts, the shell companies, the insider trading allegations. And Marcus, frustrated, cornered, desperate, said the thing that destroyed him. Every successful person does this. Every billionaire has offshore accounts. Every investor uses information others don't have. That's not fraud. That's business. That's how you win. He'd just confessed, on camera, to crimes he'd spent months denying. His lawyers tried to walk it back, claimed he was taken out of context, misunderstood, but the damage was done. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty, on all counts. Marcus Hale, the man who'd built an empire on ruthlessness and ego, was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. But here's the thing about revenge, about justice, about watching someone who hurt you finally face consequences. It doesn't feel the way you think it will. I thought I'd feel triumphant, vindicated, finally free. Instead, I just felt tired. Because the biggest betrayal wasn't what Marcus did to me. It wasn't even what he did to Chloe. It was what he'd done to himself. He'd had everything, a real partnership, a brilliant wife, a company that could have changed the world if he'd just shared the credit, shared the power, shared the vision. But he couldn't, because men like Marcus don't see partners. They see assets, things to be used and discarded when they stop being useful. And in the end, that's what destroyed him. Not me, not Chloe, not the FBI. His own inability to see the people around him as anything more than tools. But there was one more thing, one more betrayal that nobody saw coming, not even me, and it came from the last person I expected. 3 weeks after the verdict, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I'd been getting calls for months, reporters, producers, people wanting to tell my story, profit from my pain, turn my life into entertainment. But something made me pick up. Evelyn? It was Chloe. Her voice was different, steadier, like she'd finally stopped apologizing for taking up space. I need to tell you something, she said, something I should have told you months ago. We met at the same coffee shop in Brooklyn, same corner table. But this time she wasn't crying. She wasn't broken. She looked me in the eye like an equal. I found something, she said, sliding a folder across the table. When the FBI was going through Marcus's files, they asked me to identify documents, emails, anything that might be relevant. And I found this. I opened it. Inside were contracts, legal agreements, dated 3 years ago. My name was on every single one. "What is this?" I asked, though my hands were already shaking because some part of me already knew. "Marcus didn't just put my name on things to make me his scapegoat," Chloe said quietly. "He did the same thing to you, years before me. He forged your signature on deals you never approved, used your credentials to open accounts you didn't know existed, made it look like you were complicit in everything he was doing." I stared at the documents. My signature. Perfect. Identical. Forged. "If I hadn't testified," Chloe continued, "if I hadn't shown them the pattern of how he manipulated paperwork, how he faked signatures and approvals, they would have come after you too. You would have been charged alongside him." The room tilted. All this time, I thought I'd been planning his downfall. I thought I'd been 3 steps ahead. But the truth was darker. Marcus hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. He'd been setting me up legally, building a paper trail that would have destroyed me if everything collapsed, making sure that if he went down, I'd go down with him. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked. "Because I needed to be sure," Chloe said. "I needed the investigators to see it first, to understand the pattern. If I'd told you privately, if you'd confronted him, he would have destroyed the evidence. But now it's documented, official, undeniable." She paused. "You saved me, Evelyn. By telling me the truth that night, by giving me the courage to testify, you saved my life. So I'm returning the favor. I saved yours." I looked at this young woman across from me. This person I'd once dismissed as just another mistake in Marcus's long pattern of mistakes. But she wasn't a mistake. She was a survivor. And she'd just proven she was smarter and braver than either of us had given her credit for. "Thank you," I said. And I meant it. Chloe smiled. Small. Genuine. "So what happens now?" I thought about that question. About what comes after revenge, after justice, after you've dismantled the man who tried to destroy you. "Now," I said, "now we rebuild." Over the next 6 months, Chloe and I did something neither of us expected. We became partners. Not in the romantic sense, not in the way Marcus had turned partnership into possession, but real partners. 2 women who'd survived the same predator and decided to build something better from the wreckage. Chloe knew media, public relations, how to control narratives and rebuild reputations. And I knew business, strategy, how to turn assets into empires. Together we restructured Hale Capital, renamed it Brooks and Dunn Ventures. We sold off Marcus's mansions, his cars, his art collection, everything that represented his ego, his excess, his need to prove he was more than everyone else. And we used that money to fund something that mattered, a foundation, for women rebuilding their lives after betrayal, after abuse, after being used and discarded by powerful men who thought they were untouchable. We funded legal defense, career training, housing assistance, therapy, everything I wished I'd had, everything Chloe wished she'd had. The foundation launched 8 months after Marcus's sentencing. The press covered it, called it inspiring, a phoenix rising from ashes, all the poetic metaphors people use when they don't understand how much work it actually takes to rebuild yourself. But I didn't do it for the press. I did it because I remembered what it felt like to be invisible, to watch someone take credit for your work, to wonder if you'd ever matter to anyone beyond what you could provide. And I wanted other women to know they mattered, that their brilliance, their strategy, their contributions weren't just supporting characters in someone else's story. They were the story. Marcus wrote me letters from prison, 6 of them. I never opened any of them. I had my lawyer scan them for anything legally relevant, and when there was nothing, I had them shredded. I didn't need his apologies. I didn't need his explanations. I didn't need closure from the man who'd spent 15 years teaching me I was only valuable when I was useful to him. I had closure from myself, and that was enough. The last time I thought about Marcus Hale, really thought about him, was a year after his sentencing. I was standing in my office, new office, different building. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, skyline glowing in the late afternoon sun. Chloe walked in, handed me a report. Our foundation had just funded its 100th client, a woman who'd left an abusive marriage with nothing, who'd rebuilt her entire life, started a business, hired employees, became exactly what everyone told her she couldn't be. "She wants to meet you," Chloe said, "to say thank you." "Tell her she doesn't need to thank me," I replied. "Tell her she did this herself. We just gave her the tools." Chloe smiled. "That's exactly what she said you'd say." After she left, I stood there for a long time, watching the city, thinking about everything that had led to this moment, the betrayal, the pain, the night Marcus brought Chloe home thinking he was proving his power, and I realized something. He didn't break me. He revealed me. All those years I'd spent being invisible, being the silent strategist behind his success, I'd convinced myself that's what partnership meant. That's what love required. But it wasn't partnership. It was erasure. And when Marcus tried to erase me completely, when he tried to replace me with someone younger and easier to control, he accidentally did the one thing he never intended. He set me free. Free to build my own empire. Free to take credit for my own brilliance. Free to be visible in ways I'd never allowed myself to be. Marcus thought betrayal would destroy me. Instead, it rebuilt me. And not just me, Chloe too. And every woman who came after us, every person who'd been used and discarded and told they didn't matter. We mattered. We always had. We just needed someone to believe it first. So yes, I took revenge. I dismantled Marcus's empire. I made sure he faced consequences for his crimes. But that's not the story I'm most proud of. I'm most proud of what I built after, of the foundation, of the partnership with Chloe, of the women whose lives changed